What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Comment Riders. I'm your host, Josh Meek, the Uber Geek, and I'm joined, as always, by my good friend, Toby Tobes. How's it going, Toby?
Wonderful, Josh. I was thinking about it earlier. What is a comment writer?
A comment writer is someone who initially, I'm gonna tie this into common writer, ready? So a common writer is born from evil, right? The original common writer is created as a bad guy, but then cast off the evil nature and decided to fight for truth and justice instead. So a comment writer is someone who came to YouTube and was going to type a mean comment, but instead they found a video of a common writer instead, and they thought, no, I'm going to save my comments and I'm going to use my comments for justice and to raise up the awesomeness that is Kamen Rider.
That was some pretty goddamn good ad-libbing.
Thank you. I do what I can. But no, a comment writer, TM, is you and I. You and I are the only official comment writers, I think.
But see, wouldn't the people that listen to our comments be the writers? Like we would be like the comment arbiters, and then the people that come with us would be the writers.
See, in my mind, the writers were the ones doing the commenting, not hearing the comments.
Are the writers doing the commenting?
Well, yeah, because they're masked. Common means mask. The writers have masks. Yeah.
All right.
Did you not know that? After this many series deep now, and I'm teaching you that common writer means masked writer.
I probably never really thought about it. Much like when the Super Sentai stuff.
Mm-hmm.
In my brain, it just means Power Rangers. So the same
That's
vibe
funny.
of it's just a word. I never really thought about it.
Throwing things all over my desk here. So common just means masked. So it's interesting that didn't get translated. It's just one of those things like henshin, where yes, it means transform, but it's cooler if we leave it as henshin. So I think that's probably why. But if you remember, which maybe you don't, after the height of Power Rangers, Saban tried to do the same thing with Kamen Rider. So they brought I think it was Black RX is what they did it with originally, but they did the same thing where they took footage from a Kamen Rider series, brought it over here, and then shot additional scenes with with white actors basically, and did a Power Rangers type thing, but they called it Masked Rider because they did the actual translation of the name.
I don't remember that ever being a thing.
We should check it out sometime as a as a show, as a video or something that we watch. We should watch at least one episode of it because there is I won't spoil it. There's some things about Masked Rider that are so incredibly weird and confusing and out of left field that I really want to experience it with you live at some point. So we'll put that on the docket as a fun little thing to do some week.
So I'm looking, and it came out here, like the revamped Americanized one,
Mm-hmm.
when I would have in 96 and 97. So I would have been 13. I feel like still right in the prime of when Power Rangers would have been a thing, but maybe not. I do notice though that the story that they point out that the family is very multiracial, consisting of a white father, an Asian wife, and their adopted African American son.
There you go. You gotta have like somebody in a wheelchair. Like that's every show in that era had to have one of each kind, right? That's what Power Rangers was doing, right?
Yeah. Sure.
Because
they match the costumes to
yeah,
the people, but hey.
that's such a '90s view on diversity of just well, we're diverse because we just have one of everything. It doesn't matter. We're not really gonna address any actual important topics, or we're not gonna, we're gonna look the other way when we match color of suit up to skin color. But at least one of everyone's here, so we're all good. No issues whatsoever. It
was all a mess.
Yeah. But yeah, quit reading about Masked Rider because I want you to go in blind.
So
if we
like,
ever watch
I,
that.
that's fine. So just looking at the logo, it looks super 90s kids TV, and
Yeah,
like I feel like I recognize the picture, but I don't know if I'm just like telling myself in my head I recognize the picture. That's one of those things where like I feel like I know it now because I saw it,
sure.
but I don't
Yeah.
know if I knew it.
Did you ever watch VR Troopers
I
when you were
did.
young?
VR Troopers was my more favorite one,
Me too.
but also like there was Big Bad Beetleborgs was like
Uh,
the third off branch of the Power Rangers being a thing.
it was, yep.
And I
I
think there
never
was
really
one more.
watched that one though.
I don't think I watched that one either. I remember having the VR Troopers quote unquote Megazord. Like their three little ships went together.
Nice. Yeah.
And I
Yep.
also remember it, like the middle Lawrence kid, because the Lawrences were a big deal when I was growing up. Three handsome young boys. And the middle one was one of the VR troopers. And I was like, wow, he's on here. That's pretty cool.
I didn't remember the actors, I guess.
I even remember the evil guy would sit in his office when he was just like the evil business corporate man.
Yeah.
And his little catchphrase was, wait, hold on. Was forces of darkness empower me, bring me back to my virtual reality. And then he would
Yes.
slam the blind shut and turn into whatever the evil guy was. And then they
Holy
all do
crap.
the
It feels like you just like unlocked a whole section of my brain by saying that. Like I'm a sleeper agent and you just activated me. Holy crap. VR Troopers, man. Uh God, I love yeah, I think I maybe even as a kid, maybe for a time I loved VR Troopers more than Power Rangers. I know that's controversial, but I think that's what Kid Josh might have actually thought.
well, it was for whatever reason it felt like the more adult one to me. Even
Yeah.
though like they were both like I mean they're both basically the same show. It's the same exact plot, character kind of thing. There's a Zord that builds at the end. But I guess because it was like an evil corporation thing and the whole VR thing when we would have been growing up was like, wow, VR is almost here. This is almost a real thing. This is gonna be so cool.
Yeah.
Like I think they just added to like, oh, we're fighting evil robots in the virtual reality, and Power Rangers is over there punching little clay guys and furry monkey costumes and all this baby stuff. So I think it helped boost it.
I think so too. Yeah, because I was a big kid. I was a kid who was really into video games and computers. And yes, like it is hilarious now in retrospect how much of a chokehold the concept of VR had on my childhood. Like the impending like we're all gonna live in virtual reality. It's gonna be so realistic that you're not gonna be able to differentiate the VR world from the real world, which none of that happened. Like we even have like VR headsets now, and we have some pretty impressive tech, but none of it is even remotely close to the promise of VR when I was a kid.
Yeah, like there was a real weird gap of like 50s to 90s or 60s to 90s, 40s to 90s, somewhere in there, where like the concept of what the future would look like was way beyond what we're remotely touching in 2024. And yes, like
Yeah.
there's some concepts that like one day you'll have a computer in the palm of your hand, and everyone's like, "Wow, that's crazy. That sounds insane." And we all take our phones for granted. But like the Jetsons hyped us on houses that could rise above the pollution of the world and flying cars and everything else. Like I feel like flying cars was the big one.
Yeah,
Like
not
for
even
all
close.
of growing up, oh, we're gonna have flying cars one day. But when I really think about it, people drive so goddamn stupid as it is that I don't want them existing in another plane or another. Is that a
Yeah,
plane like
we
X Y
don't want
Z?
them to also be able to go up and down of their own free volition. You're right.
Yeah, like
Left and
someone's just
right
gonna
is
slam down
dangerous
on
enough.
yeah, front, left, and right gets me into accidents or almost accidents or whatever. The last thing I need is someone flying above my car and like their piece of shit flying car craps out and just lands on top of you.
Yep.
No
Yeah,
one's ready for it.
I think the only way flying cars work is if we go fully automated. Like we're heading in that direction with cars right now. But like if we get to the point where I just get in my little personal transportation pod and I type in an address and then it just goes there and I don't interact with it at all, those things can fly, right? They'll handle it themselves. They'll be able to not hit each other. But yeah, if you're trying to do flying cars and there's a human who is like deciding when to go up, when to go down, there everyone's gonna die. No one's gonna make it through that.
And now that I'm older and a little more fearful of the world, I don't think I would get into it. Like if I owned a flying car, I
Yeah.
don't think I would get in it. Because like if my car breaks down now while I'm driving, like the tire blows out, the car just kind of like goes flop 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 flop, or like the engine dies or whatever, and the car just stops. Like granted, you have to get off
Sure.
the side of the road, but nothing really major will happen if my on the ground car stops. If I'm in my crappy flying car and like the engine shits out, there's no coming back from that either.
Yeah, I mean, like, what's in the air is gonna just
There-
fall.
There's no bumpers. You just crash. Yeah.
Yeah, you're just crashing down. Maybe they have some safety mechanism where, like, a chute deploys or something. Maybe it's fine. Maybe we just replace here's what we do. We replace all roads with giant bouncy trampolines. And then your flying car can only fly over top of the existing road. So that you don't really gain anything at this point, but you're still having a flying car technically. So then if it breaks, you just fall onto the road and do a little bounce and then you're all good.
Interesting.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to workshop this with the United States Department of Transportation.
We're going to have to bring in the brain trust. Exactly. Oh, VR troopers flying cars. What are we going to do? At least at
Speaking of
least
neither of those things,
all right, fine. So yeah, speaking of neither of those things, let's jump over and read some emails, Toby. We have an email this week that you can join in on if you would like to send us an email. You can send those over to cast@commonwritersucks.com. Once again, that is cast@commonwritersucks.com. And our friend Shade has done just that this week and sent us in an email to cast@commonwritersucks.com. And Shade says, we're back to our regularly scheduled gotcha. Shade talking about Kamen Rider Gotchard episode 36, which we watched for today. Shade says, the legend arc has finally passed, and we're back to our normal Gotchard routine. Um, Shade says, lots of lore dump this week. We even got to see our new big bad, the Abyssalus King Gigist, in action this time. And apparently he has the power to create really cool looking transitions. LOL. Jokes aside, gotta say I enjoyed this episode. I don't know if it's just me, but for some reason, I thought this episode was really well directed. Not just because of the sick transitions, though those are cool, but also because of the action scenes. Felt like they really had a better flow than usual, if you know what I mean. And I kind of thought that too. Yeah, I thought that a lot of the action was really well done this time around. Like there's one thing that pops out in my head with like Kudo sort of like flying backwards, sort of flipping backwards and like kind of skidding out like on her knees kind of a situation. Like I thought that was pretty cool. They definitely like did some cool stuff, and I think that the action was generally pretty good this time around.
they
It was
got the
fun.
people back.
Yep. Shade says, I also love the lore they established for the chemis here. It does tie well into the basic nature of Kamen Rider. To borrow on the words of producer Minato, born from evil, denying evil, and speaking of justice, this is the essence of Kamen Rider inherited from the Showa era. If that's the case, it would be no exaggeration to say that each and every chemi is a Kamen Rider.
That's pretty deep.
Finally, last time you guys talked about how the actors act during the henshin scenes, and I'd like to talk more about it because it is hilarious. Back in the day, henshin scenes involved a lot of poses. You cannot imagine how zoned in the actors were doing it behind the scenes. We're talking poses that go harder than power posing. I've tried to do it before, I know. And Shade links to an episode of Kamen Rider Decade with Black and Black RX, and they're doing their henshin. And yeah, you've seen these because you've seen clips, and we've watched Black Sun and stuff. And so there's a lot of like pointing with your arms and doing slow motion circles, and a lot of like clenching my fists as tightly as I can and stuff like that. That's very like Showa era Kamen Rider Henshin. And then Shade says these days Henshin scenes are hilarious because of a different reason. Ever since the belts got more complicated, the poses gradually turned into just putting things into a belt very dramatically. And you can see that with Hodoro's actor from last episode's henshin scenes. But what you guys do not realize is that on set, the props for the shows are just still plastic toys. So on set, you see a bunch of guys putting plastic pieces into their belts really dramatically, while the white plastic toys are just loudly slamming into each other.
I
uh,
always kind of assumed that like the toys are what they used, I guess, just because if they wanted to match, like of all things, I feel like the way that the toys match what you get out of the show is way better here than it is if like this was an American TV show and they sold the kids toys.
Yeah, they look pretty much identical. Like the scale is maybe a little different, but like looks wise, they're spot on.
Yeah, so I kind of always assumed they were just playing with the toys on the show because that would seem like the best way to sell the toys off the show.
Yeah, and they pretty much are. So I sent you the link there that Shade sent us. It's timestamped. So if you click on that, it should be right when the henching happens, and it is very hilarious because you literally just hear the plastic smashing into each other, and they have to look very dramatic while they do it.
Oh yeah, it's like
Yeah. It seems like something that would make you laugh like the first 20 times you tried it. Like trying to keep a straight face while you smash your toy together. Very good
it,
stuff.
it it really sounds like when you get mad, like a Super Nintendo, Genesis, any of the old like big plastic cartridge based systems, and you try to like rattle the cartridge in, but it's not really going in. You're like slamming things, like whatever. It's like
Totally.
it's literally that sound of just like plastic on plastic, like clanking together, or whatever noise. I guess we'll call plastic on plastic. I don't think it clanks.
That's close though. Yeah, I mean it definitely is it's that's a good description. Yeah, it does sound like slamming a Genesis cart in and like not quite getting it lined up perfectly the first time. Doing that little like jiggle it around thing. Yeah. Very much that vibe of sound. But then they do the editing of the show and they put all those actual metal sound clinks and clanks in, and we get the magic that we know and love.
No one's ever gonna be the wiser.
Nope, nope, nope. All right, Shade, thanks very much for sending us in that email. If you out there are listening and you have something that you would like us to know, you can send us an email as well. Send those over to cast@commonwritersucks.com. And before we jump into discussing Kamen Rider Gotchard episode 46, I want to tell you about our Patreon.
36, not
We,
46. Keep going.
what did I say?
You said 46. We're only on
Oh my
36.
gosh. Oh my gosh.
You're
I'm so
rush. You're
sorry.
rushing the agenda.
So sorry, everyone. Kamen Rider Gotchard episode 36. But I want to tell you all about our Patreon. You can check that out at patreon.com/the comment writers. And on Patreon, we put out bonus content, a crap ton of bonus content, if you will excuse my French. We do watch alongs, which are or watch and reacts, which are essentially Mystery Science Theater, but for tokusatsu. Right now, we are watching the Super Sentai Boon Boomjer, and we are watching X-Aid. So every week you get episodes of those where you can hear our thoughts as we watch along. You can watch with us. It's super, super fun. And we are finishing up X-Aid very, very soon. So we will have another video that you can check out where we pick our new season that we're going to watch, our next Kamen Rider season.
It was a
So
wild time.
it
You
was
have
a
to you have
wild
to
time.
buckle in for that video for sure.
So go check that video out if you are excited to see what our next series is. And go check out the Patreon. We'd love to have you, and we'd love to have you join up in our Patreon Discord as well, where yeah, we have lots of good times hanging out and talking about all kinds of stuff. So once again,
We
patreon.com/the comment writers.
we do fun Kamen Rider things there, so you should come hang out.
And we share, we'll do some news here real quick too. We share Kamen Rider news, such as we now know the name of the next Kamen Rider, Toby.
We do. It
Kamen
sounds
Rider,
dumb.
Kamen Rider Gav. Yeah, I don't know. I've been like rolling that name around for a while in my head, deciding if I like it or not. GAVV, it looks cool. Like Gav looks cool. And the theming supposedly is going to be like snacks and monsters. Is the rumor? Is like Gav is like a mouth, like a monster mouth eating. That's sort of what they um have stylized the logo as, and that's kind of what the rumored driver looks like, is kind of a mouth. So that'll be an interesting theme. I don't know how you can do a show, about monsters eating snacks that isn't somewhat childish. So I think maybe we'll get a goofier season again. But I've been wrong about things before. We'll see.
So like it's funny because this is the third new season that we're watching together coming
Mhm.
up whenever it comes up. Uh the past two have been very real world trend based. And I know food's a constant and there's always food and people always like snacks. But that's so far of a swerve of what I ever would have predicted the next season would be. And
Okay.
I feel like the snack thing has to work a certain way because not that we ever watched Kamen Rider game, but like they already did a food Kamen Rider series,
Yeah.
so I don't want them. Like I never saw a game, so I wouldn't know if they're actually repeating game or not. But I don't want them to repeat that same thing of just like, oh look, we're food. But if like they're fighting monsters and the monster is like a box of French fries from McDonald's, then
That
I'm
app
back in.
that's what I want, yeah. If they basically are just making, like, Boon Boomjer, where
Yeah,
just yes, every
exactly.
monster is ridiculous. Yeah, obviously, I'm very open for it. And obviously too, we saw this a lot with Geats, where, the toys are one thing, and the toys might look ridiculous, but then they could tell a completely different story kind of on top of those toys. So, like, really, the theme doesn't dictate a lot of what the story is, or it doesn't dictate as much of what the story is as you might think that it would. So anyway, that's what we know so far of Kamen Rider Yav. And yeah, we'll talk about future news as it drops here. So Toby, without further ado, let's jump into talking about Kamen Rider Gotchard episode 36.
There we go.
So again, to recap, as we mentioned before, we are coming off of the Kamen Rider Legend arc, the
The
series of
world's dumbest
episodes,
arc.
exactly, where the 100 showed up. We fought the 100, we beat them, and the Abyssalus King in that last episode discovered that this egg that he needs is inside of Hodoro, which is a crazy thing to learn. This episode, however, Toby, opens in what I think is a pretty weird scene. We are rearranging the kitchen Ichinose restaurant, and we're setting it up kind of like a stage because the uh, Spanner's mom, if you will, is attempting to do some research to make Lachesis more human. And the first step is to make her laugh. So she wants all of the kids to do their best joke or whatever to try to make Lachesis laugh.
And
Uh,
as you know, when you try to make someone laugh, if you're on the spot and you're like, "Hey, you know, you're kind of grumpy. You're probably still half evil. Let me try to make you smile." It's just never going to work. They're already in the wrong mindset. They're not there to have a good time.
yeah, they're ready to
They were
grump it
they,
out.
they were drugged to the comedy club. They didn't want to go.
And also, as you know, when you say to someone, do something funny, it almost never is. And this was proof of that because, boy, I don't know if these things that the kids were doing were supposed to make the audience laugh, but I felt like Lachesis sitting in that front row, and I put my frowny face on and I grumbled throughout this whole stupid scene.
My main
Uh,
note for this was just this is bad comedy.
so bad. I did think that the Kudo Sabimaru dancing was actually pretty hype. It wasn't funny, but I liked the dance moves. So
They
that
were
was
very
cool.
in sync. It was a good job.
Yeah. And then my only other note for this scene, Toby, is that it looks like Hopper One is trying to fuck Hodoro. Like, there's a point, it goes on too long, where Hopper One is trying to tickle Hodoro, but Hodoro is just on the ground moaning while Hopper One is like writhing around on top of him. There's just a lot. There's a lot of imagery in that
That,
scene.
as we discussed last week, that's where the egg came from.
I think so. I do think so. Something is up. I'm not trusting this Hopper character from here on out, Toby.
So my other main thing was the Lachesis. It was basically like Wednesday Adam vibes, especially with like the full goth outfit, just like deadpanning. Look at these idiot kids acting stupid. I want nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
But I think it was towards the end. It was when she was done with the bullshit and walked away. She says like, "I don't want to be human if this is part of it." And
Yep.
I felt her on this. Like,
Me too. Me too.
I don't want to be human either if I have to put up with this nonsense.
She gives the best fake laugh as she walks away too. Like she does this like super put on, like ha 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 ha. and it's really good.
Very
she
theatrical.
Yeah, she does an awesome scene here of her just completely no selling all of these jokes, burning them as she walks out, and then yeah, dropping the fake laugh. Really good stuff. After this scene, Toby, Hodoro, uh, oh, I guess that happens later. Sorry, we're mixing things up a little bit.
Oh no.
We cut over instead, rather, to Professor Minato and Spanner. They've gone to visit the alchemy headquarters. So I'll combine a couple scenes here because we cut away from this for a while and then come back. So we'll kind of combine it all together. But essentially, Professor Minato and Spanner are kind of catching up the alchemy dudes, the alchemy bosses, on what's been going on with the 100 and with Gigist. And they don't want to do anything right now about Gigist. They want to sit and wait and see what he's up to. And Spanner takes massive offense to that. He's like, we have to do something now. Like, time is of the essence.
I
And
feel like going all the way back towards the beginning of the series, the few times that we saw Spanner talking to them,
yeah,
I feel like their vibe the entire time has just been like, let's just wait and see what's going to happen here. Don't
totally.
rush it. Let's just see.
Yeah, that definitely. They definitely always want to see how things play out. And Spanner always wants to murder them, basically, is the dynamic. And then, of course, they don't really have much time to let it play out and see what happens because Gigist himself shows up in the room. The curtains part and Gigist appears, and I thought that was super cool. I was not expecting him to show up at Alchemy headquarters, and he
yeah,
just like rolls in.
yeah, like he strolled in like it was nothing. He was just like, "Hey guys, I know who you all are. You know who I am." Uh, he wasn't. I don't think he was really there to fight. He was really just there to put everyone down and get them
Yeah.
going,
Yep.
dig his heels in, piss him off. But sometimes things escalate. Sometimes a good enemy doesn't have to really do the first stab.
No, yeah. He wanted to show up. He wanted to scare them. He wanted to rile them up, and he does exactly that because one of the alchemy bosses uses alchemy to form a sword, and he runs at Gigist. Gigist basically freezes him and then melts him. Says basically, I give him a taste of power that humans can't handle, and he just kind of like disintegrates. So Gigist is powerful, is what we've learned here.
Don't mess with him.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought that was so cool him showing up. I thought that scene was good, and I really really was shocked when he walked in that room. And I love a good face to face with the enemy scene where there's no violence or where like it's not just a fight. Like I really like movies and shows where they do that of like, listen, I know that you're my ultimate villain, and I know you're gonna walk out of here. And I love when they get to do a little bit of like cat and mouse head game type stuff there. That was cool. But cutting back over to the restaurant, which is what happens next, we essentially recap the Daybreak Alchemist. So there, Kudo kind of talks about how she heard this fairy tale when she was a kid. Sabi Maru agrees and tells a little bit of the story and then shows a picture. But basically, the fairy tale of Daybreak Alchemist is that he saved the world from a terrifying demon, and he used a golden thread, or a thread from a golden flower, rather, which is atop a golden hill that only the chosen alchemists could climb. And when you use the thread to make spice, anyone who eats that spice will smile. It's a very complicated and gold infused story.
and
But
and that eating smile was the only motivation Hodora needed to be like, this is a hell of an idea. I hope this is real.
yep, he heads off to go shopping for his next special recipe. I I understand that they explain later in the episode here that Gigist is the terrifying demon from the Daybreak Alchemist. So like I get why they brought the story back up here again. But I don't really know why we had to dive into the whole thread story. I'm sure that'll apply probably at some point as the hill and the thread or whatever. But it was we got very in depth into the lore of the Daybreak Alchemist here, and I just wasn't sure why we needed that far to go.
Well, Lisa ties into the old head of the sisters who is obsessed with gold and everything.
Yeah,
So I
that's true.
feel like that is remotely a callback, throwback kind of thing of, hey, like the evil people are always somehow tied to golden paths or golden flowers or strings or whatever.
Everything's gold. Yep, indeed. So Hodoro's heading off to go shopping, but unbeknownst to him, of course, Spanner is fighting Gigist out in the street. Gigist is godlike in this fight. Basically, he's doing like minimal movements to like completely counteract everything that Spanner's doing. He's just kind of like he's like deflecting him with his arm and like stepping aside to make him miss and things like that. Opening a portal to somewhere else to like dodge being stabbed. Uh, and he comes across as like super super powerful here. And while he's fighting, he's basically explaining to Spanner that listen, this isn't going to work out because I understand you completely. He says, I understand your soul, your thinking, your actions, everything.
I know the deep seated pain that just sits inside you that you'll never be able to get over.
Which is hardcore. Yeah. When he just stops and he's like, "Yeah, I know about how sad you are too." Really, really cool. Spanner's about to get murked here basically. Monado does show up to save him, but before he does, Spanner does get hit really, really hard. Gigas thinks that basically it's gonna kill Spanner. Doesn't kill him, but instead he has a purple flame engulf him, which it seems to excite Gigist quite a bit when he sees it.
Well, that was one of his things from,
When his parents died.
yeah, way back in the beginning.
Yeah. So he's got that power in him. He's got that dog in him, if you will. And Gigas basically says like, "All right, the humans here suck, but the Kamen Riders, there might be something to them."
There's something I can work with here.
Clotho shows up, and found it very interesting. She asks like, "Okay, what's next?" He says, Hodoro is next, and she's like, "Are you gonna kill him?" Basically, it's like I kind of like that one now. Can we not? Can we not kill him? I like that we're slowly winning over the sisters.
They'll all be there in the end.
They will. They really truly will. There's no other way. And then we cut over Toby once again, Hodoro and his shopping trip. And this is where Hodoro re-meets the Time Lord card. If you remember Time Lord, where we traveled in time for that one episode. I believe where we initially met the future Kamen Rider Gotchard Daybreak as well. The orange Gotchard. And Time Lord's just hanging out in the fruit section, Toby.
I
He's
thought it was
just
amazing. Like he has a key weapon looking thing, and he
Yep.
literally just stabbed it into the bottom of an avocado. So when Hodoro pulls up the avocado, there's just a card hanging there, like talking to him, and no one finds it weird.
No
Like
one.
Hodoro definitely wasn't using hushed tones of like, "Wow, you're here." It was just like, "Wow, buddy, how are you?" Like screaming at this little piece of paper in his hand.
At this point, my head canon is just that there's an alchemy like personnel who just follows Hodo around and just mind wipes everyone that he interacts with. Just like this kid is so he's just gonna tell everybody about chemis constantly. So it's just your job to follow him and make sure everyone gets their mind wiped as soon as they interact with Hodo.
He's gonna do something stupid, guys.
Yeah.
Just listen, just deal with it, just follow him, do whatever you gotta do. He's he's a happy little boy. Just let him go.
He's a happy little boy. So he meets Time Lord here and um basically very quickly he thinks the Time Lord's trying to warn him about something. And then he gets transported to a rooftop. So these are the transitions that Shade was talking about, where Gigist can kind of like cut the world in half and sort of spin it like a clock. And he took Hodoro from basically the market where he was currently standing to a rooftop through one of these spins. Um, I liked that Hodoro like initially thought that he was in one of those labyrinths again, where he was stuck in with 100 episodes. That was a nice callback to being like, "Oh, this again."
The
um,
and like the trend, like the setup for the world's gonna start spinning. It was kind of a slow burn, but worked really well. Of like there was people doing a raffle in the background,
yeah,
and like you just watched them spin the raffle wheel, and it was fine at first, and then like the wheel spun backwards and then forwards, kind of slow motion, and then they cut back again and kind of like went the opposite direction. Like they kept spinning the wheel in like a very like ominous, eerie way, and
uh-huh.
then the world started spinning. So I thought it looked awesome to do it that way.
Yeah, that was like a very like uncharacteristically like artsy scene to happen. Because like you said, like the wheel's spinning ominously, and then eventually the wheel spins, and we stay focused on the wheel, and the world rotates around it.
Yeah,
And
all starting at this point going forward, like Shade said in the email, but I noticed it. I'm sure you noticed. Like it actually all works really well. It doesn't
yeah,
look as it looks like it doesn't look as cheap as you would think it would. Like sometimes some of the wacky graphics on these shows are a little amateur looking or like not the best quality, but like this actually just kind of works. It just looks fantastic every time they keep doing it, and they do it a lot. So it somehow worked every time.
yeah. I thought that it super super worked. It didn't look cheap at all. I agree, and yeah, it's a really good example of them using what they can do. So like what's in their limitations, like using it super super well. I think because every time they did this like clock spin transition thing, uh, yeah, it looked great. I wasn't taken out of it at all, like I am with some of the bad effects, where it just really breaks it all down for me. As soon as Hodoro ends up on this roof, Toby, things go down pretty hard. Gigas calls him a thief and basically just sticks his hand in his chest, just right away. Hand right in the chest, grabs onto the egg that's inside there, and he tries just literally ripping it out of Hodoro's chest. Uh, that was cool. I really liked that. Just because a lot of times like a bad guy is gonna have like, oh, I'm gonna talk to you forever or whatever. But I love that he just like, no, I'm gonna take this right now. I'm gonna stick my hand in your chest and take this away.
This is the most important thing right now, so we're not even gonna play around. You're here with me now. Give me my shit.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's not like I'm gonna take you down because whatever you represent thing. No, no, no. It's just like you have what I need, and I'm gonna take it away. Yeah. The egg turns out fights back actually, and Gigas says something to that effect basically. And then Hodoro gets sort of thrown backwards. He dehensions and he drops all of his cards. Like all of his Kemi cards sort of fly out from him.
And
And
the only it's not a huge complaint, but as soon as the cards flew out, I knew another speech of like, "Hey, they're chemis, they're my friends" was coming, and it did. And that's the only real nitpick of this episode. I've said it a couple times now, or multiple times now. I need the weekly speeches of about the chemis to stop or tone back a little bit, but it is not stopping.
for me, at least this time around, the speech about the chemis then ended up with like revelations about the chemis.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
you knew,
it went somewhere afterwards.
yeah.
But when it started, I was like, "God damn it, we're going again."
Yeah, so I appreciated that it happened again, but in service of like the actual story instead of just that being the theme that's running throughout the show of like the Chemis are our friends. Um, because it starts off right off the bat as you're saying because Gigist picks up Skibo and Hodoro freaks out. Like, oh, don't take Skibo. You make Skibo do bad things. I don't want him to do bad things. The Chemis are pure. And then we get into a little bit of a villain monologue because Gigas explains that he created all the chemis, which we knew. We knew that he created those first two, and then all the other chemis came from those first two. And he drops then the bomb though that chemis were created to hurt people. He says because Hodoro's saying like no 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 no, and he says, well, this is what they were designed for. They were created to hurt people. And then he points at Hopper One and he said, even that one, it's a pest that devoured everything, causing famine.
I thought I actually thought that was really cool for I mean like a couple of reasons, but like it's even a good tie into like the plague of grasshoppers was
Yeah.
one of the main like religious book of revelations meltdown kind of things or like it's actually like a thing where yes grasshoppers and crickets at one point like if you go down that path is a thing of like yeah they ate all the crops that's literally what they do
Yeah, they
he's a little menace.
they are a pest. Yeah. Totally, totally accurate. I loved the point at Hopper One too, like even that one, and then we get like the perspective down the arm, which is very good. Hodoro, of course, says no, chemis are pure, and Gigas says, yeah, you changed them. Poor chemis.
You're doing the
And
thing they actually don't want to do. You're the
yeah,
real jerk.
Yeah, this is their nature, and you're trying to make them different. And yeah, I like that reversal. And then in what was like maybe the most badass part of this whole episode, Giggist crushes the Skibo card in his hand and pours him out into amalgam. I loved just the zoom in on the card as it crushes. Just absolutely destroyed that particular Kemi card. Of course, the big thing here is Skibo created amalgam without a human, so it's just a pure Kemi amalgam here, which Hodoro was very shocked about.
I mean, overall, he did look very cool. Sibo as an evil amalgam is a pretty sick outfit.
Which we'd seen that outfit like very early on, if you remember. Like we have seen that Skibo amalgam before. This one I think was slightly recolored from that one. They painted it a little bit differently. Um, I'm sure just it's that same suit. They just painted it.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, then we get our Skibo amalgam fight. Very quickly, Hodoro's friends show up, and the Time Lord brought them there. So I like that he was off on his own little quest. Hodoro disappeared, and he's like, "Well, I'm gonna go tell the alchemy kids." Just off doing his own little thing.
He's always there to help, man.
Skibo in this fight is very tough. Hodoro has a hard time putting him down, fighting him. Clotho shows up. She henshins, and she starts fighting Kudo. So everybody's involved. Hodoro eventually up henshins into his UFO X form, and Skibo is still putting up a crazy fight. And it's at one point, Hodoro sort of gets a weird feeling. He's not sure if he should keep fighting or not. Things kind of slow down, zoom out a little bit.
It was
But
basically like when he could have, if he used his sword to actually stab things, and we knew his like kill move wasn't the rider kick, it would have been like the end of the fight. Like if it was two humans fighting with swords in a movie, and one had the blade to the other's throat, and was like, "He's evil, but I really shouldn't stab him. I don't want to go down his dark path."
exactly, yeah, he had his reservations because chemis are pure, and this is just a chemi. It's not a human mixed in. So like, yeah, I can't bring myself to do it. Unfortunately, Toby, his hand was forced because Skibo flew up on a kind of walkway where Sabi and Renge were at, and he's about to hurt him. Hodoro says, like, no one's gonna hurt my senpai. And Hodoro essentially just nukes Skibo, fires missiles, blows him to all hell. And I wrote down in my notes, Toby, this kills the Skibo. Because our episode ends basically, Hodoro attempts to recapture the Skibo onto the card, and it's not working. It's not working. And he walks up into the mist, and I laughed so hard. He picked up a dead skateboard.
It was exciting because like when you didn't go back in the card, you could feel in your
Yeah.
stomach that's what was coming, and there's like
Yeah.
the puff of smoke, and you're like, did he really do it? Did he actually do it? And then like, especially with this whole thing being like, I love chemis, they're my friends. Skibo is pretty OG overall at this point. Like he literally murdered his friend, and
Yeah,
then like, and
yeah,
then holds the corpse and like cries and
yeah. Yeah, totally. Like if you take out the fact the corpse is a skateboard painted white with eyeballs on it, it's super dark. Like he had to kill his friend and he's holding the dead corpse of his friend and just crying the fact that he had to do this action in order to save his other two friends. Like he had to kill a friend to save two friends. Then you add in the fact that it's just a skateboard spray painted white that he's crying to, and it's a whole different scene. I love that the first Kemi died at the hands of Hodoro. It only took 36 episodes. I'm glad we finally got here and had a Kemi death, and Hodoro was to blame.
it almost seems fitting overall that he is the one that murdered the chemi.
It does, yeah. Things that are lost to us now, Toby. We can't have that cool samurai skateboard form anymore. You remember that one where he
Oh
he
yeah.
he he uses that one a
Very,
lot to
very,
go really fast.
yeah, we haven't seen it for a long time now, but I vaguely remember it.
Yeah, that was like one of his very first kind of like pensions that he does with Skibo. We've had Skibo for a long time in this series. Skibo was think maybe the first real Malgam fight that we had. And then yeah, for he's been around. Skibo's been bouncing around doing his skateboard thing, and now he's dead, Toby. He's
Never
never coming
coming back.
back. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here to mourn the loss of our dear friend Skibo. He died how he lived, with wheels.
He's probably easier to skateboard on now
Totally.
if he's not acting up.
Yeah, you remember when that dude was a living skateboard before? It was impossible to skate on that guy. He was always moving. It's much easier now. Yeah, totally. What would have been the funniest? My question for you. So obviously this is it was a good beat, I think, in the story. I'm laughing at it because of the ridiculousness of the scene, but I do like what they did. I think having a Kemi die for real here was the right thing to do in the story, and I really like where that sort of like is going to take Hodoro potentially. Um, but my question for you, Toby, is what would have been the funniest Kemi to die here? Like Skibo's very funny to die, but is there a funnier one?
They've gone through so many so fast
Yeah.
that it's hard to remember all of them. But I think any of like the like Wrestler G would have been a fun like
Oh yeah.
the same vibe of like holy shit did he kill Wrestler G? One of the X cards I think would have been an interesting twist of like he actually murdered one of the super powered people that decided to help him, like X Rex in particular. Like if he murdered X Rex after the whole thing where he was in his stomach and bonding and we're not so different after all. Like
Yep, that would have been a good one.
or
The one
or my final would be the Bunny Parka. Bunny Parka would be the third one. If he cried over accidentally murdering a hoodie, that would have been Chef's Kiss. Series finale. Just end it now. You're not topping this episode.
I'm so glad that you remembered Bunny Parka because that was my number one with a bullet. I was gonna say Bunny Parka would have been very funny here because Bunny Parka would have died, and then can you imagine the crying while he cradles a hoodie in his arms as it's draped over his arms? Um, that would have been maybe the funniest thing that's ever happened on TV if Bunny Parka had died here.
I think like barring killing Hopper himself, I think Skibo is probably their best actual choice of let's make this kind of real kind of vibe.
Yeah. No,
Uh,
I agree too. Like, cause he was in the first set. Like I said, he was very very early on. He's been around for a long time. Like he of all the chemis that aren't Steamliner and Hopper One, or he's probably like top five of one dude would recognize. I would say.
I looked it up while you were talking. He was captured in episode 2.
Okay, so he was the first one then. Yeah, he was the first real like this is what the show's gonna be like type chemi capturing that happened.
Yeah. So I'm going through all the Chemi cards real quick while we're talking, just to see if I could find other better options. A lot of the vehicle ones I think would have been funny.
Oh yeah.
Looking down the artifact list, we have forgotten that he has an eraser Chemi card.
Oh yep yep yep.
So that would have been a good one. He could have killed Smartphone. I think that would have been another.
Yeah, because smartphone would be like smartphone.
But I think at least going through this quickly, those would be the most, I guess, just funny. Like at least Skibo is impactful in a slight way. Like if you would have killed the dumb eraser, I wouldn't have cared at all. I just would have thought it would be funny. But for the fact that like if he would have held the eraser and his like a little white eraser in his hand and like cried over it, like no, you're supposed to help me. That would have been perfect.
Yeah, it would have been really good. Yeah, I think some very good options. So Toby, what do you think about this episode about Gigist and his plans and everything that happened?
I'm glad we're finally back to the normal TV show.
It
I'm
feels
glad
good.
we, yeah, they grabbed a couple chunks of different plots they had open. They once again restarted all those plots. So now we're back on the right path.
Yeah, it definitely. I agree completely. It feels like we restarted some of the story and stuff that had been laying dormant for a little bit, and then they're tying a lot of things in that they I thought maybe we're just gonna sort of like leave to the wayside. Even the like Clotho is being won over to Hodoro type stuff. Like I liked hinting at that. But yeah, there was a lot of threads coming together, and I think each time that I see Gigist and get to see him interact, I like him more and more. And I think this episode where he showed up at the alchemy headquarters and all of the way he fights and stuff like that, like I really am enjoying that crazy terrible demon character. I think that he's super fun. And I'm sure there's going to be, if he was the demon from the Daybreak story, there's probably like an upgrade to Gigas we're gonna see, right? Like towards the end, he's just going to like unfurl giant demon wings and like take his helmet off, and he's crazy looking or something. Like there's gonna be something that upgrades Gigas, I bet.
Well, so all the lore pictures are him as like a three-eyed monster, basically.
Yeah.
So either the helmet comes off and he really has three eyes, he's some creepy monster, maybe would be a good one. Or the alternative of that is they half beat him in a fight and like break the glass in the visor, and you can see the eyes going forward, but still the
Uh,
same outfit. I
oh,
could work
that'd
with
be
that
cool.
too.
Both of those unfortunately feel like a
They're not gonna
little
happen.
too dark for a kid's show. Like I know we've seen like broken visors here and there and like, that sort of stuff, but like a broken helmet where you can see a monster underneath feels too creepy for me. Like that just feels like a little bit over the line of like how scary they get. I think anything that looks like semi demon like that has three eyes might be like a little bit further than they'd go. Um, Without making it goofy. Like they definitely do goofy monsters, of course, but like obviously you wouldn't want your big bad to look goofy.
That's disappointing.
Yeah, we'll see though. Well, they surprise me all the time, so who knows? All right.
If the weird sub videos of the sisters come up and they're like, "Hey all, we have a kind of scary episode coming up soon. It's just a TV show. Ha ha ha. We're all actors." If they pull something like that in the next week or two, I know it's gonna get
Things are about to pop off here. Uh Indeed. All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up then for us about episode 36. Of course, please send us in emails, cast at commonwritersucks.com. And check out the Patreon, $3 a month, patreon.com/the comment writers for all sorts of bonus content. And again, soon to be starting a new series. Check out our other video to find out what that is going to be. Of course, we are always doing things on the internet. Toby, where can the people find you?
On Twitter, it's Life of Tobes, and on YouTube, it's Tobes Plays.
You can find me on Twitter at PrettyDeeceJosh, on Blue Sky at meek.lol, and on YouTube at PrettyDeece, youtube.com/PrettyDeece. All right, so that's going to wrap us up. We will be back next time around for episode 37 and probably attending the funeral of Skibo. So we hope you join us back for that. Until then, have a great week, everybody. Peace.